Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll Podcast. To my right is Felipe Amarim. How you doing, man?
All good, man, and you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. I'm loving it. We're in sunny Soho. We're in Felipe's flat today, recording a bunch of episodes, and it's a beautiful sunny day outside. As soon as we're done here, we're going to the casino to watch some Formula One. The sun's shining. It's just wonderful to be here, man. I haven't been to London in a long time, and Soho is London's capital of music. You've got jazz venues everywhere, blues bars all around.
We're about 5 minutes walk from Ronnie Scott's.
So. And aren't we about 10 steps from the Blues Post?
The Blue Post, yeah.
Felipe lives above this bar.
Which is an iconic pub. And also about 4 minute walk from the Blues Bar, the famous Ain't Nothing But, where we recorded an album.
We did, right? Yes, yeah, that's it.
Live at the Blues Bar with Jack Hutchinson.
That's right, yeah. No, so it's a great place to be. And if you can hear any noise, it's just the lovely crowds of Soho enjoying a sunny Saturday. So without further ado, let's get started. This episode is focusing on a particular album, and that album is none other than Black Sabbath's second studio album, Paranoid. Paranoid. What an album.
I love it. Just the drink of the day.
Oh, of course. Let's start the episode. Show everyone your coffee.
Today's episode is brought to you by Nespresso.
I was going to hold one of the pods up. I won't take the machine. But yeah.
By the way, we never get paid any money, but we keep promoting the brands. They're going to pay us one day. Thanks, Nespresso, for not paying me to promote you.
But there's his coffee. The episode's started. Let's go. The album Paranoid by Black Sabbath, released in September of 1970 and recorded in the space of 2 weeks in June 1970 in Regent Sound in London. Just 2 weeks, 16th to the 21st of June.
Which, by the way, Regent Sound is about 10 minutes walk.
Is it close to here?
Yeah.
Brilliant. The length of the album is 41 minutes and 50 seconds, and the singles from the album were Paranoid and Iron Man / Electric Funeral. So those are your basics on the album, the basic info on the album. You want to tell us initially your first thoughts about the album?
I'll tell you my first feelings on the album.
Is this the first time you listened to it?
I'm talking about the first time I've listened to it. I was a teenage boy in Brazil at the time. So you don't know how that feels like, because you always had the internet, didn't you, to get access to music. So
I think you're going to say, I don't know what it's like being a teenage boy in Brazil. I was like, no.
Surely you don't. So I was like, exchanging CDs and not vinyls. I had vinyls, but vinyls were not a thing anymore. It's like we're moving into CDs. Yeah. And CDs and tapes, like, swapping them around. So my friends, I got this Deep Purple thing. So, and I got into classical. You wouldn't find pictures or videos of those guys. So unless their faces on the album cover, you wouldn't have it. And then this friend of mine said to me, do you know what? My dad was a hippie, so he listened to all those 70s prog bands and classic rock stuff, but he didn't know about Sabbath. I said, what's Sabbath? Black Sabbath. I said, really? What's that? Oh, my dad just got into them like now, after being a kid in the 70s, but now he knows about Sabbath, and he introduced me to them, and it's bloody amazing. So let's listen to it. So this friend of mine bought Paranoid, and I said, I want to get a tape, and record that to a tape. That's what I would do. My,
and then you'd have the tape.
Yeah, my tape recorder. So I've got, borrow a CD, recording to a tape. Oh, okay. Long story short, got home, listened to Paranoid. When Iron Man started, I was like, no fucking way. I'm going to a record shop now. I'm going to buy the CD. Because those guys deserve my money, and it was really expensive at the time. Imported from America, etc. Went and bought it because the riff from Iron Man was so different from anything I've ever heard before,
and anything that did come before, not just what you heard, but
exactly. In general, isn't it? I didn't know that because I didn't know the context. It was like when the riff. It's just. I can't describe it. That's it. It's mental.
Indescribable.
Yeah, it is.
Heavy, and it's thumping, chugging.
Slow.
Yeah.
Slow.
That's a characteristic of Black Sabbath. Yeah.
Dark.
Yeah, they can do slow, dark riffs as well as anyone, can't
I
they?
think it was the darkest album I've heard until that point. Then obviously, if you listen to the first album, it's even darker. I'd say it's even like the whole theme of like black magic and the devil and all that stuff. I think is more present on the first album than Paranoid.
I agree.
But Paranoid is.
I feel the music is darker on Paranoid though. Maybe the lyrical content of the first album.
Yeah.
Because I feel the first album, whilst it is dark, and I know we're going to talk heavy metal later, I'd say there's definitely a more bluesy, jazzy influence in the first album, whereas this, to me, is straight up hard rock / heavy metal. So
Sabbath were a blues band.
Yes.
And the band was called Earth. They turned into a metal band, but when metal wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
If you think they're metal, I don't think they're metal, but there you go. They turned into heavy rock.
We'll get to that later, right?
They turned into a heavy rock band when not too many people were playing heavy rock. And being from Birmingham, it kind of justifies the whole thing, isn't it? Loads of gangs around at the time. Birmingham is a lovely place now. It wasn't at the time. It was, really dark and
it was where all the factories were and the industries, a lot of working class people. Not that there's an issue with working class people, but
working class people,
poverty, gangs, crime and everything. So it wasn't a nice place to be. But you've got to think a fundamental thing. Maybe we should do our segment now, but a lot of times you hear bands like Led Zeppelin are also credited with beginning the stages of heavy metal with the distorted guitars, Robert Plant screaming. Isn't it funny that two bands from Birmingham are lumped in with the who started heavy metal debate?
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's an essential difference there. Because like Robert Plant and Ozzy were good friends.
Were they?
Yeah, but Plant was a classic hippie, happy, flower power kind of stuff, and Ozzy was this like disturbed kid,
it's two other
committing
sides,
crimes and doing. It's like because his lifestyle was different, his life experiences were different. That's one of the beautiful things about rock and roll. It does your background is reflected in your music, no matter how hard you try to hide it.
That's really funny you say that, because we'll allude to it when we talk about specific songs and specific lyrics, but the overall one of the let's do this metal thing now, okay?
Yes.
Here's it's not a new segment, it's a regular segment with a slightly different title. Here is Felipe Unleashed.
Black Sabbath is not a heavy metal band.
Da, da, da.
Shocking.
Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Right, let me go back to what I was saying. So, then actually, right, heavy metal. Let's have a little debate. Tell me why you don't think Black Sabbath are a heavy metal band.
I need to describe what heavy metal is for me.
Do that then.
So, and I'll be very specific about the instrumentation.
That's fine.
If you listen to a band that no one would claim is nothing but heavy metal, which is Iron Maiden, that's what it is. No one would claim they're not heavy metal.
Yeah.
Iron Maiden has heavy metal. Really fast guitar solos. Really fast-paced songs.
Okay.
Heavy all the way. Some dynamics in it, but mostly heavy. Vocals shouting most of the time. And it's essentially, for me, aggressive. Right?
Okay.
That's metal for me. That's... How many bands are like that? From Maiden to System of a Down to Metallica.
Yeah.
Sabbath, just think about the tempos of the songs. They pretty much don't have fast songs. They're slow. And it drags. And it's almost sloppy in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's loads of spaces between notes. You don't have those ridiculously fast guitar solos. You don't have all those elements you have in normal heavy metal. It's less technical in a certain way and more... and it's quite bluesy, which you don't necessarily hear in heavy metal. Maybe because the way it's played, but obviously there is blues influence in heavy metal. There's in pretty much any rock and roll sub-genre, you have some sort of blues influence, but you can't hear that clearly on heavy metal, but you can hear that in Sabbath. You can hear the bends on the guitar solos, the kind of distortion, the kind of guitar tone, and and the fact they don't, like most metal bands I know, have 2 guitar players.
Okay, interesting, yeah.
Sabbath is a three piece in terms of instruments.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more dynamics, so it goes down and up. And there's loads of acoustic tracks. Loads. The albums, there's acoustic stuff, there's like just piano and voice, and vocals sometimes. You got some elements there that you don't normally find in heavy metal, and I don't think they're heavy. So to just pick the main word, heavy metal. Sabbath for me is not heavy, it's dark. It's scary, not heavy.
Yeah,
That's my point.
I'll give you my thoughts on metal. I do consider myself... Now, the difference is obviously our generational difference.
Yeah.
Because you're about 15 years older than me, aren't you?
Not that much.
Not 10. 10. I do sort of consider myself, not by any means a metal expert, but the predominant genre, if we lined up every band and song I'd ever listened to, the ones I listened to most have been heavy metal bands. And whilst I agree with what you're saying in terms of you cannot deny Iron Maiden are a heavy metal band, for me, bands like Black Sabbath, their darkness is what makes it metal. I think
you're talking about the lyrical content.
No, I mean even the musical content. If you think that the first riff from Hand of Doom, even though... Now, here's things about Hand of Doom. It's syncopated. Now, syncopated, for those who are listening, is when it's on the offbeat. So you go dun 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 do 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 do.
Yeah,
do.
most
It's on the
notes
offbeat.
are on the offbeat. Not
Now,
on the beat,
that's a jazz thing. That's a blues thing. That's not a straight classic rock heavy metal thing. So fair play. But the darkness of those riffs, the note choices he uses, that to me is what Sabbath did to essentially create heavy metal. So although the riffs are slow, although they are taking some influence or a lot of influence from blues and jazz, because Iommi was a jazz player, I still think the way they presented the songs is what created heavy metal, and I would call Paranoid a heavy metal album, which is interesting. But the one other thing I wanted to add to that was, for me, the next most important thing about heavy metal and how we define it is the lyrical content. And we'll get into this when we talk about the songs more, but I found it funny. I watched a documentary a few years ago where it was the inception of heavy metal, and it was predominantly based around Black Sabbath. But there was 15 minutes before they moved on to Black Sabbath where they said, first ever heavy metal riff, the Kinks, You Really Got Me.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's distorted. It doesn't make music. Well, it makes musical sense, but it doesn't follow a scale or a pattern. Da 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 da. Just distorted guitar. First heavy metal song, Helter Skelter by the Beatles.
Yeah.
Why? Same reason. Distorted guitar. John Lennon shouting. Dark lyrical content. First ever heavy metal lyrics. Paint It Black, the Rolling Stones. 65.
It is really dark.
I see a red door. I see a... Whatever it is, he sees something and he wants to paint it black.
And it's about death, and it's really...
Exactly. Metal. So I think lyrical content matters as much for me in defining what heavy metal is. But as something that contradicts my point, Iron Maiden sing about American pilgrims coming and taking over Native American lands.
But there's death.
That is dark. Yeah, no, you're right.
You know,
but Iron Maiden sing about a variety of historical and science fiction stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm actually going against my point. I'm saying some modern metal now, the lyrics don't matter. Yeah. It's the music. But I think back then with Paranoid and with Sabbath, for me, Paranoid is the first ever heavy metal album. And whilst we can debate more, and to an extent I can say I agree with you that Black Sabbath are not an exclusive heavy metal band, Paranoid for me is a heavy metal album because they took the darkness, which I think to be heavy metal, they took the slow riffs with the heavy drum beats, which to me indicates heavy metal, and the lyrics, and the distorted guitar, and Ozzy's shouting, and put it all in that one package, which for me is heavy metal.
Right. If you go forward on their career and you listen to It's All Right with Bill Ward on vocals, that is a lovely pop ballad about being friends with your neighbors and having a good
Is it?
life.
I don't know the song. We'll put it in the playlist as usual.
But that's not from the album. So they actually went into different directions. But
and all their acoustic songs as well, like you said.
I'll take your point. Paranoid specifically is dark, and it has the metal, the typical heavy metal lyric influence. So I think we can find a middle ground.
Yeah,
here.
of course.
I think
That's
Sabbath but for me, it sounds like hard rock, but really dark, and with heavy metal lyrics.
Yeah.
Put it like that. Although heavy metal wasn't a thing by then, so they didn't know they were doing what would be called heavy metal.
So do you agree? I'm not going to make you say Paranoid is a heavy metal album, but do you agree that Paranoid is responsible for heavy metal?
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. What's the main point about Paranoid is the album that follows Black Sabbath. The album
First
Black
album,
Sabbath.
yeah.
So, which at that point that was quite shocking. They came up with a completely different way of playing rock and roll.
Yeah.
And how do you follow that? It's like 100% innovation in your first album. How do you do something better than that? My response would be, the only way to top that is to write better songs.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't need to change the genre because they came up with a different style, and not many bands have done that. Actually, your first album is something that no one has ever heard before. It's completely different.
If it's not broken,
way too
don't
dark,
change it.
and it's like, okay, so are you gonna just replicate that on the second album? What they did was like, yes, we will, but we're gonna write better songs. In my opinion, the main difference between the first and the second album is the first album as an album is great, but Paranoid,
better songs.
Every single track in Paranoid is a heavy rock classic.
Yeah.
Every single track. I wouldn't put. I would really struggle to name my top 3 or top 4 on that album because I love every single track, and I'm not exaggerating on that.
Well, let's dig down into the album then.
Yes.
We're actually going to start off with a quiz. Got 6 questions here. As usual, guys, play along, keep track of your score, and let us know in the comments. What was the original title of the song War Pigs?
Oh, I don't know. There was a different title. Yeah, I don't know. No.
So it was called Walpurgis, Walpurgis, which is the satanic version of Christmas. But the record label said no,
that's
no,
too much.
So,
right.
but
That's way too far.
We'll talk about the lyrics of War Pigs when we get to it. Question 2. Geezer Butler was literally paranoid about the title track being compared to another song that was released 1 year earlier. What song was that?
Oh, I guess was Led Zeppelin's Dazed and Confused.
No. Zeppelin, yes, but not Dazed and Confused.
No, wait a minute.
Paranoid.
No, because the riff resembles that one, isn't it? Which one?
Communication Breakdown.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a part of Dazed and Confused that actually sounds like Paranoid.
There is, but I think it's the fact that it was a fast song.
Fast song,
yeah. But anyway, so he was literally
paranoid
that Zeppelin were going to sue. But who is Zeppelin to sue? Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, exactly. So.
Question 3. What song title was the album originally intended to be named?
War Pigs.
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
That's 1 out of 3.
How long did Black Sabbath play each night in the early days of touring Europe?
God, I have no idea. I'm going to guess 2 hours. It means how long was each
How
gigs?
long was their set each night when they toured Europe?
I would guess 2 hours.
8 3/4 hours.
How come?
Let me find out. Actually,
that's insane.
it's probably the only reason we'll have to talk about this song. But anyway, we'll talk about the song Rat Salad, which is a drums. It's an instrumental with a bit of drum solo. The band were used to having to play 8 3/4 hour sets, and Bill Ward was asked to play on his own for 45 minutes of that 8 3/4 hour set. So he had enough material to write Rat Salad, basically.
Well, that's probably how he developed his vocabulary of drum phrasing.
And so they just took that. He took ideas from that and put it in Rat Salad. Question 8 3/4 hours, man. Can you? I'm done after an hour and a half. Like, I know he does 2 hour sets. 3 times a night.
No, I do 3 hour sets every.
You do 3 hour
night,
sets.
5 days a
but
week.
sometimes you do 2 hour. You do two 2 hour sets.
Yes.
So it's 4 hours.
4 hours.
8 3/4 hours. Fucking hell. Question 5. What was the original title of the song for Iron Man?
Oh God, you got me on those, man. I think that's going to be my worst score for every quiz. Amazing. No, yeah, but that shows you've done your research.
I have done it.
Yeah, don't know.
Iron Bloke.
Iron Bloke.
Ozzy Osbourne said
it's a bit
the
too
riff.
British, isn't it?
Ozzy Osbourne said the riff sounded like a big iron bloke walking around, and that's how this. And they said, "Listen, not bloke. Let's call him man." Question 6: Why were Black Sabbath taken to court because of the album?
I don't know either. Oh man, it's got 1 out of 6.
That's okay. Don't worry. A nurse was found dead after having killed herself in her apartment, and Paranoid was spinning. So it's the last thing she listened to before she killed herself.
You're going to blame the artist for someone's personal decision. People do that a lot.
Anyway, bro, don't worry. 1 out of 6. It's all right. Not your best score, but I'm sure in the future.
It's not the easiest question.
Yeah, exactly.
That was really good.
Let's get into the songs now. Actually, I just want to talk a little bit about the writing and composing of the songs, because what I think is noticeable about this album is how long some of the songs are, and how there's quite extended jam and soloing sections in them.
Yeah.
And this is because most of the songs were written from improvisational jams that they had. Listen, if you've got 8 3/4 hours to play every night, you're going to jam a bit, aren't you? So they took this stuff. They took stuff they'd been working on, jamming on during those gigs, and brought them to the studio.
And I believe there's something we said before in this show, which is one element that is missing nowadays in rock bands is to write stuff together.
Yeah.
Jam and record and try again, instead of each one creates their own part separately and then they just go to a studio and record separately.
Yeah.
So a band sometimes is only a band when they go on stage. But back in the day, those guys would be living together and playing together every day at home and jamming and playing
writing, and then that would become writing together.
So you can see that the album, for me, one of the interesting things about Paranoid is there's you can hear that the songs came out of jams, but they are very well developed and they knew exactly where they're going. War Pigs is such a complex. We've played the song live many times. It's such a complex.
We will shamelessly link our version of War Pigs in the bottom of this show notes as well.
Not?
Yeah, why not? Sorry, bro.
It's an intricate piece of music, and it was recorded pretty much live. You have overdubs of guitar solos, but you can hear the band playing together live, and it's like starts and stops, change of tempo,
it really
change of groove.
It really did set the precedent. Sorry, did you?
No, it's just like. Very clever song in terms of arrangements, very unpredictable, and I don't even notice the song is 8 minutes long. I'm just like, you just keep following it, and the lyrics are brilliant.
I feel like it set the precedent of how different and how many different directions a song can go in.
Yeah,
it doesn't just have to be one thing, does it?
No.
But
there's not one main riff.
Let's start with that song. Let's talk about War Pigs. We've obviously spoken about it.
Which was the original title. It intended as the original title of the album, but the label wanted Paranoid to be. And actually, let me say something about the album cover. You have that guy.
Good point.
That awful picture of the guy
with the gun.
I think it's a sword and a shield. It's an awful, badly taken picture.
The costume's terrible as well.
It's not scary. It's just weird. But what Geezer Butler said about the cover is that was War Pigs.
Yeah.
So that guy is a warrior. That makes a lot more sense. But then they changed it to Paranoid. So what the hell is that guy doing the album cover? It doesn't make any sense, but that's rock and roll.
That's still good. That's excellent. So with War Pigs, I mean, the interesting thing for me about War Pigs is there's 3 main points. Extended solos, which we talked about, but Black Sabbath were so instrumental, excuse the pun, of shaping just the fact that in hard rock, what was also to become heavy metal, and at that time classic rock, taking as much time as they needed for the soloist to express him or herself.
Yeah.
That's special because there's 2 extended solos in War Pigs.
There's an interesting thing about Tony Iommi. He is regarded as one of the masters of rock riff. And he's the guy who came up with, I'll dare to say no one has come up with more iconic riffs than him. Maybe Jimmy Page a close second. But you know, in terms of riffs, it's just unbeatable. And then people forget to look at his solos.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Great solo.
Yeah, no, you're right.
God, man, it's such his phrasing is so jazzy and bluesy and heavy at the same time. And it's just like, but as I said, they would allow him to solo for as long as he needed to express his ideas and back to the riffs. And I think the songs they literally lead you to the next section, even though some of them are really complex and long. It just flows, which is really hard to do.
The other thing, and actually, this is a. Okay, we'll stick with War Pigs. The unusual verses.
Yeah.
2 notes, baran, and then the hi hat.
And there's hi hat and vocals.
I can't do the maths in my head, but it seems to me that like 1/16 of 2 bars is the instruments. The rest is the drums.
It's 2/16.
2/16 of 2 bars.
Yeah.
Is when all the instruments are in together.
And then nothing happens, just a hi-hat and vocals.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. But how interesting is that in terms of it relates to the most? I don't know, man. The most. What's the one thing you can do musically without any instruments? You can clap and you can sing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's primitive, isn't it? It's just the hi-hat, like hand claps, and vocals. It's very organic, let's put it like that. It's like anyone can do that. You don't need the song. You can do this.
Yeah.
And there's gather in the masses and sing on top of it.
Doesn't it work,
don't need instruments.
So
think about it. Like that part is just very human.
One of the best quotes I was ever told about music, and I think I even said it before on this show, is it's not about the notes you play, it's about the space you leave. That's the best quote that was ever given to me when I was learning and training in the bass.
And that's where I think they're very different from most metal bands, because they leave more space.
Next up we have Paranoid, which obviously the title track of the album. For me, it's metal's iconic pop song.
It's punk. For me, that is a really punk song before punk existed.
But do you see what I'm saying about the pop song? How it's short, a nice
2.5 minutes or
something like that. Easy to play. Not, do you know what I mean? Not
it's just verse and chorus. There's 2 parts
goes back and forth, and then there's solo over the verse.
I've heard
it's a pop song structure.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I've heard they recorded it at the end of the whole session, and they had some minutes left. Yeah,
let's do a segment. How rock and roll is that? The title track Paranoid was written as an afterthought because they didn't have enough tracks to meet the standards. It took the band from starting recording it to ending it 25 minutes to finish the song, and yet it is heavy metal and rock music, and in general one of music's most iconic songs. How rock and roll is that?
It's very rock and roll.
I think a lot of bands do a song at the end and it turns out to be their best one. But what was Paranoid in 25 minutes? And what Paranoid means?
That was one of the first rock songs I ever learned on drums.
It's one of the ones that
let me tell you this before I respond how rock and roll is like. There was a music festival. Think about this. It's Motown, in Brazil in late 90s, early 2000s. There was a new bands first festival.
Yeah.
There was 14 bands in an afternoon in a park. 7 of them played Paranoid. Because if you start in a band, it's a kind of a mandatory song, and they needed the song for the same reason Sabbath needed to fill the criteria for
songs.
You need to play 25 minutes. Oh, fine.
We've only got 22 minutes.
Oh, let's play Paranoid then, because everyone can do it.
Brilliant.
And I remember the last band saying, "Oh, guess what we're going to do now as an encore? Paranoid."
And everyone went,
everyone was like,
"Yeah, I love it." Brilliant.
So Paranoid. How rock and roll is that? So because of that memory, God, I'll give it a. That's really rock and roll. I mean, writing like that. I'll give it a 73.
Perfect. 73 for that. That's
a good score for that.
After Paranoid becomes a very interesting song, Planet Caravan. Now, the one
That's
thing
Bill Ward on vocals.
Is it?
I think it is. Yeah.
Whoever it is,
Let's Google
funnily
it.
enough,
I'm pretty sure it's him.
They used a Leslie speaker, which most people might know is used. A Leslie speaker goes really well with a Hammond organ.
Hammond organ, yeah.
I don't know how that relationship happened, but just trust us on that. Hammond organ, you put it through a Leslie speaker and you get that beautiful Hammond sound. They put whoever was singing through that. They put the vocals through the Leslie speaker, which is why you get that really weird psychedelic effect. The other thing I wanted to mention about Planet Caravan was Tony Iommi is showing his huge jazz influence here. He plays a jazz solo basically over this. He was hugely influenced by a jazz guitarist, one of my favourite gypsy jazz artists, a guy called Django Reinhardt. I'm going to put a couple of Django songs in the playlist just so you get a little taste of what Tony Iommi was listening to in the 40s and 50s.
Well, there's an interesting thing about it. So it's actually really acoustic, and you have congas there. So Bill Ward is playing percussion. I couldn't find reference because I've heard it was him on vocals, and I'm pretty sure it just sounds different. The credits still say Ozzy on vocals. I don't recognize his voice. Maybe it's the effect.
Maybe it's the Leslie speaker.
Yeah.
Could be that.
Which is quite unique. So again, that makes the song stand out from the rest of the album, doesn't it? Because it's an
interlude. It's a little interlude, but actually it has a song length. It's the length of a proper song, but it acts as an interlude.
Yeah.
They wouldn't play that live, or maybe they have, but you
can't
can't sing along to it.
I don't think they ever do the acoustic stuff live.
So yeah, when you listen to that song, just take note of whoever's singing through the Leslie speaker and Tony Iommi's jazz soloing. Now, Iron Man, really, really important here.
Iron Bloke.
Right, this could be one of the most distinctive, iconic, and memorable riffs in music. Let's call it guitar music.
Yeah, apparently, let's talk about the lyrics. Apparently, the lyrics are about a guy who travels to the future.
Yes.
And he sees how fucked up...
he sees the apocalypse.
The apocalypse, yeah, how fucked up things are. And it's like he wants to come back and tell people to not fuck up, but he lost his voice or something.
No, they all mocked him.
Oh, they
mock him because he had a brush with a radiation thing, so he become metal.
Oh,
and he's come back.
He comes as an iron.
Again, this is just in my head. He's coming, going, everyone, you must stop. We're gonna kill the planet, and they're going, fuck you, Iron Man, and. So he can't spread the message, so the world ends.
Oh, that's it.
I think
it's
so.
Not that he lost his voice, but no one would listen to him.
No. He then tries to warn the world, but when ignored, he becomes angry and vengeful.
Oh, that's
it. Maybe he becomes the apocalypse.
That's it. That's really interesting.
That's sci-fi writing.
Time traveling, Time traveling. When I first heard the song without understanding those lyrics, I was like, the lyrics are quite silly, aren't they? But no, it's actually very clever. It's like a movie, isn't it? It's like because I've seen an interview with Tony Iommi where he said that they watched the horror movie. And it was like, do people pay money to be scared by a movie? Why wouldn't they pay that for music? Yeah. So we want to do horror music, scary music. And that song is a bit, about that. It's like there's a really horrible story.
It is scary. I mean, me and Dash were listening to the album on the way here.
It doesn't get any worse than the apocalypse.
First note, the that horrible descending is lingering on that note. Yeah. But that was actually done using a ring modulator. So any producers out there, we're not producers, so we don't know. But a ring modulator, it would create a wobbly electronic effect by taking the signal. Remember when we talked about Dark Side of the Moon and the song On the Run, where he works with the knob and it goes daga 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 daga. They put the electronic signal through that, and it distorts it and makes it electronic, and that's how they got that crazy little voice thing.
Again, experimenting in studio,
innovating stuff as well.
Not only so, the whole album would be like classic enough, just by the composition, really. Even if they were not trying something with effects or whatever, just by writing those songs, they were innovating. They were changing rock music through that, but they were also trying different sounds, and so that's why Planet Caravan sounds like it sounds. That's why Iron Man, that vocal at the beginning, that voice at the beginning, is quite scary.
Yeah,
It was like,
you're right.
first time I heard it, I was like, what the hell is that? You know?
The next song is Electric Funeral, and again, these are all great songs. So,
Electric Funeral.
I
Again,
don't
it's
wanna
about death, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about nuclear warfare, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What the one thing I want to point your attention to in Electric Funeral is the middle section where it goes a bit up tempo, and I noticed some jazz elements in there. You've got Geezer Butler almost doing a bit of walking bass line, so it's like with the bass behind that, Geezer Butler. It's almost like a walking bass jazz. I don't know what order to put those words in. A walking jazz bass, a walking jazz bass line. And I just thought it was interesting because we heard and I read about Tony Iommi's jazz influence in Planet Caravan, and for the first time this morning I heard, oh, that's like a walking jazz bass line.
Let me phrase it better: a jazz walking bass line.
Yeah, there you go.
That's exactly what it is.
So yeah, that's it. That's all I had for that song. Now, next is probably my favourite song of the album, Hand of Doom.
Do you know what? It's my favourite as well.
Is it really? Oh, wicked.
If I can pick one, I don't know. I like all of them.
Well, yeah. Hand of Doom for me, that's the music completely and utterly reflects the title. It is doomy. It is dark. And I love the contrast, the dynamics.
Yeah.
Whenever the song comes on, even today, I said to Dash, I wish they'd mix it so that the bass was louder at the start. I turned my car volume up and I'm hearing the bass, and then suddenly, when it kicks in, kicks in. And I thought, hold on, they did that on purpose.
I'm not quite sure, but I think the remastered version you can hear the bass more clearly.
You can hear it. It's just quiet.
Yeah,
but the reason is because when the chorus comes in,
played quietly.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You can hear it's not only the mixing. It's Geezer Butler's right hand.
Yeah,
so being like quiet when you need to be quiet. Again, they're really good with dynamics.
Yeah,
they're really good at that.
And the content about that song was dealing with Vietnam War because Geezer Butler said he didn't realise that when he was researching the Vietnam War, how many soldiers got hooked on heroin during the war. Was it heroin? I think it was. Yeah, heroin. They saw the effects of heroin on the Vietnam War vets from his research during the war and afterwards, when the war veterans came home and were, we don't need to get political, but the people were disgusted at the war veterans because they were just sent out there to do a job, but to the people they went out and slayed many Vietnamese people, and the public were not happy. So these returning war veterans were basically, they disgusted their public, and so a lot of them became homeless, depressed, turned to drugs, suicide.
Which is like, see, all sides of warfare. It's
well, if you want to know what people like us think about the people who send these guys out to war, then just go listen to the first track of this album, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. War pigs,
yeah.
Exactly. So that's it. And we still have wars going on. It's part of history of humankind, but not many people are brave enough to approach those subjects in a song.
And this is
War Pigs, Hand of Doom, all about that.
Well, this whole album approached and breached lyrical topics that people were not ever touching.
There's three things, I guess, that actually describe the album for me: it's destruction, death, drug abuse.
No, that's good.
But
yeah.
it is.
I think the first two are more predominant than the drugs.
Yes,
but the drugs
Paranoid is a guy who is completely addicted, isn't it?
Is it?
He lost his mind.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, basically, I think he gets to a point that no one understands him, not even his girlfriend. It's like, he's disconnected from the world because he's completely high all the time and is pretty much destroying his life. That's how I understand the lyrics, really.
Yeah, excellent. The other thing about Hand of Doom is that I mentioned it earlier, but the syncopated bass line, I think it's just so unique because, we like musically, you talk about syncopation when you talk about jazz, funk, blues to an extent, but to use it as the verse, as the backbone of a verse.
Also, Sabbath swings. They swing. If you are into music, if you want to go more technical about it, it's when you don't play straight, we don't subdivide the beats in like 2-4 parts. It's like when you're playing 3 parts, and when you play something in between that, you can swing. The triplets, when you play 3 notes per beat, you can pick the first and the third and play a shuffle, which they do quite a lot, but you can just swing it a bit more. So you can't sometimes you can't measure what they're doing in between one beat and another.
Yeah.
It swings like a jazz band.
Yeah.
They swing like a jazz band. And Bill Ward is really...
Was he a jazz drummer?
He was
studied
jazz.
jazz.
Do you know
right?
what? I define his drumming as really loud jazz. It's just loud jazz. Every single phrase he plays, the solos, the fills, it's not like what a rock drummer would do.
Yeah, that's interesting. We touched on Rat Salad and the drum solo on that and the instrumental. Fairies Wear Boots. Do you have anything to say about that one?
I love the lyrics.
Yeah.
So again, that's drug abuse. The guy is going to the doctor and it's like, he's talking about fairies wearing boots.
No, well, it's actually,
not real.
it's you are right. They started writing the song because they were approached by a gang of skinheads.
Oh, right.
Who called Geezer Butler, for having long hair, a fairy.
Oh, right.
And Geezer turned and said, no, you're fairies. And because they're skinheads, and skinheads characteristically wear boots, fairies with boots. But the lyrics, check this out. This is a quote I read from this article. Black Sabbath's lyrics often went off on random tangents. This is proven in the second half of Fairies Wear Boots, where he changed the content from being about skinheads to LSD abuse.
Yeah, because but basically he's talking to the doctor.
Yeah.
The fairies wear boots, and you gotta believe me. And what does have you got the lyrics there? Please do, because there's one part that I totally love about it. But it's just, basically it is, he's high as a kite, isn't it? That is, it's what it is again. I love it. I'm going to go straight to this point. Yeah. So I went to the doctor, see what he could give me. He said, son, you've gone too far because smoking and tripping is all that you do.
Well, that's a lyric about drug abuse if I ever heard one.
It is.
But yeah, that's a really good song as well. The final thing musically I wanted to touch on the album, and ironically, I only discovered it and thought about it on the journey to you today. For me, the most interesting, innovative, and unique part about the whole album are the variety of drum fills Bill Ward spreads across every song. For me, the drum fills... that's the interesting point. For me, bro, the drumming makes this album. I'm trying to think how War Pigs would sound if there were no fill or dumbed down fills.
Well, if you listen to like John Bonham's drumming and Ian Pace's drumming, all the classic rock guys, even Nick Mason, it's more about the groove than the fills. Whilst Keith Moon, Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker and Bill Ward, they were more about the fills.
Yeah.
But that's a really dangerous territory. If you're playing as many fills as you play grooves, you might make the song lose its, foundation.
Yeah. Can I respond and say that actually, from what you've just said, as a drummer, I feel that, and tell me if you disagree or agree with me, Bill Ward has found the perfect marriage between grooving. I'm thinking of the groove in War Pigs. Politicians,
it's groove,
but then
it's
coupled
funky.
with the fills, he's found that perfect harmony between
fills,
filling and drumming and grooving.
Yeah, but the fills are like, as I said, they're almost sloppy. They're like all
Some
over
of
the
them,
place.
though, I mean,
in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way, it's like which means like the phrasing is very creative. There's loads of dynamics. His technical abilities are really, like, I think, really high level at that point.
He's stunning drumming.
And it's a big part of it. But again, if you compare to modern heavy rock, is way more loose and free than in modern heavy rock, because there's loads of fills more than grooves. It's interesting.
That's interesting. Well, just to finish off, really, I'll just give you some quotes. This is something I forgot to talk about earlier. About the impact, we went off on our what is heavy metal discussion. The impact of a person's background having on their lyrics. This is what I'll read what I've written. Yeah. On the lyrics, Tony Iommi said, "It was all the flowers in your hair, and we wanted to sing and play about the other side of life." Geezer Butler said, "No one said anything about it. Dylan had long since faded away, and nobody was talking about the things I wanted to talk about, political stuff." Ozzy Osbourne said, "We were hearing, if you go to San Fran, wear flowers in your hair. What's all this flowers shit? I've got no shoes on my feet." So I've
seen an interview with Ozzy when he says, "The only time I saw flowers at my mate's funeral.
Yeah, interesting.
And that's it. So he could not relate to the hippie flower power vibe. And it's totally understandable.
And
it's
you
different
can
background.
hear. And they want to talk about more important stuff.
Robert Plant, yeah. Well,
sorry,
it might be,
to them.
because entertaining yourself is also important.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Plant, when he was asked about what's the message behind Led Zeppelin's music, it was like, it's about fun.
Yeah.
Just have fun. Because he was a hippie, he was into the, that all that vibe, like peace and love. He could feel that. Ozzy couldn't. So he was singing about... But he had someone writing the lyrics for him, which is even more brilliant.
Yeah.
You got someone who understands you, and it comes from the same background, and it's better with words, and they're going to write those words for you. I have a quote as well, so from Ozzy's biography, and this is really interesting. And what sums up the album is the quality of their songwriting, because they had already defined their genre in the first album. They had already destroyed all the rules and started something new. So what improved from the first album to Paranoid is the quality of the songwriting process. So the fact that Billboard would come with the perfect groove, and you have the complex structures and the riffs by Tony Iommi, and Ozzy's unique vocals with the perfect lyrics to sing about. And those lyrics were written by Geezer. Ozzy said about Geezer. Geezer came up...
Ozzy said about Geezer.
About Geezer. Geezer came up with these heavy-duty lyrics about death and destruction. No wonder we never got any chicks at our gigs. So the girls wouldn't come to the gigs. Geezer just wasn't interested in your average I love you pop song. Wow. That's it. It's like, I can't write about those things. I'm going to write about death,
politics,
destruction, drugs.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we'll finish here. We'll leave you with a few of the accolades and what critics believe this album has done. AllMusic said that it is one of the greatest and most influential heavy metal albums of all time, which defined the sound and style of heavy metal more than any other record in rock history. Rolling Stone said Sabbath ruled for bummed out kids in the 70s. Nearly every heavy metal and extreme rock band of the last 30 years owes a debt of worship to the crushing riffs, Visigoth rhythms, and agonized bray. A bray, by the way, is the noise a donkey makes. So I think that was a positive, despite comparing Ozzy to a donkey. But then accolades on the Rolling Stones 500 greatest albums of all time. It places number 139. It is number 6 on Guitar World's greatest 100 albums, and it sold 5 million copies. You gave us your thoughts about the album with the songwriting quality. For me, this is how I'd like to sum up the album. The lyrics, they're probably some of the most real lyrics that we've done on this show.
Yeah.
And the music had up to that point. The real aspects of life have been brought into question. Things that haven't been sung about since the likes of Bob Dylan. Also,
they very direct, very explicit.
Yeah.
It's not like
no metaphors.
Let's use a metaphor to talk about. There's no son. You're taking too many drugs.
Hand of Doom. First there was the bomb. Vietnam, napalm.
There you
Boom.
go. Straight to the point.
The lyrics are a huge part of the development and rise of heavy metal, as we discussed earlier, in my opinion. And the depressing, sad, dark lyrics have impacted this just as much musically. So, that's my thoughts on it.
Brilliant album. I never got tired of it.
No, and you never do you? No. Each song offers something different, I think, which is fantastic. But anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. We're going with our shorter version of the outro, as suggested by Mr. Felipe here. You say it.
Find us on the internet.
That's it. Nothing else, right?
Just because if you're listening to this in 2045, maybe we don't have a Spotify or YouTube, we have something else.
Exactly.
We still, I imagine, we still have something called the internet. So go on the internet.
Yeah, and find us.
Because we're there everywhere. Any small corner of the internet.
That's it.
We're going to be there. Thanks for being with us again. It means a lot to us. And keep on rocking, everyone.
And as usual, long live rock and roll.